Welcome to the UKOCR Community Podcast, presented by Obstacle Racing Media. Each episode, we'll be talking to race directors, elite runners, weekend warriors, and frankly, anyone else from the UKOCR scene that will talk to us. Here is your host, Alan, aka Muddy Duck.
Anywhere in Chicken Town. The bloody scene is bloody sad. The bloody news is bloody bad.
This episode is brought to you in conjunction with our partners, Immerse Recovery. They're the home of recovery for everyday and world-class athletes, offering a range of products like ice baths to help you recover, ready for your next workout. And hey, I get it, you might already have an ice bath. But still, check out their website. There's plenty there that might just help you, like a floating thermometer to ensure the bath is extra cold. Or if you're up for an upgrade, their peak performance tub actually lets you lie down. Me, I'm a fan of their microfiber towel hoodie, perfect for stepping out of the bath into something warm. So, head over to immerserecovery.co.uk and use code UKHXR15 for 15% off the entire range. Again, that code is UKHXR15. Immerse Recovery. We go again. And now, back to the show.
Greetings, friends, acquaintances, and anyone else just happens to be listening. Welcome to another edition of the UKOCR podcast with me, Alan. Yes, I'm back. Not your Who's Hot team, not your pint-sized OCR team, not the Swift half, just me and a guest. Not done one of these for a long time. I hope I've still got it. So, who have I got on? Well, I've got a guy who runs with something called a bag of worries. More to come on that. Let you find out about it, what the bag of worries is. But we talk a lot about mental health. Now, mental health is a little bit of a dark subject for some people, especially men. You know, we all suffer from mental health at some point. Mild anxiety, extreme anxiety, mild depression, extreme depression. We've all got a little bit of mental health going off about us. But in men of a certain age, it's becoming more and more I can't get the words out. Prevalent? Yeah. Anyway, you know what I mean, people. And it's also the biggest killer of men over 40, I think, suicide at this moment in time. So I thought, let's get someone who knows what they're talking about and someone who's also into OCR. So we've got Andy Vosper on. Yeah, Andy Vosper, who currently works for Samaritans, but he does a lot of OCR, mainly down at nuclear races. So you might have met him down there. If not, I'm sure you will bump into him down at Wild Forest or at nuclear races. Just a little warning about this. A little bit later on, we do talk about mental health. So if it's something that you are struggling with and you want to reach out, you can reach out in private and confidential to us. Or we do actually have numbers actually in the description if you want to speak to someone. If you're not ready to speak to someone, that's absolutely fine, and we'll talk about that later. But you take care and stay safe, people. I'll speak to you all soon. Andy, welcome to the UKOCR podcast. We almost forgot where I am then. I was like, welcome to, yes, it's UKOCR podcast. I think we are here. How are you, my friend?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you very much. How are you?
Well, actually, as you know, I've actually just rushed home for this. I was working and I was like flying around, but I'm guessing apart from the traffic, I was getting slightly aerated with the traffic tonight. It's school holidays, and for whatever reason, the traffic on the roads is absolutely snided. So that's the word, snided. It's a funny word, that. Snided where we are, which means it's like jam-packed and you couldn't budge. And I only live literally 4 miles from work. I could have actually ran home faster than drove home today. So, which was the thing. Do you work at home? Are you remote working?
Do you know, ironically, actually, so I usually work from home, but today I was in the office, which is about an hour away, but it took me nearly 2 hours to get home. So very similar to you. I was on the phone to my wife saying to her, I'm really worried I'm not going to make it in time for this. Trying to do all the back roads and cut around the back streets. So about 5 minutes before you messaged me, I just walked in the door. So yeah, normally I work from home, but it's just, it would be the day that I needed to be home for certain times. So yeah, in a very similar position. Lots of interesting words being said to myself as I was trying to find my way home through the country lanes.
You're down south, I believe, aren't you? Because I know you train down at Nuclear, because you've told me
Yes.
this. So you must be like Brentwood, Essex way.
So I live in Gravesend, so sort of just on the Kent-London borders, sort of Gravesend, Dartford area, and yeah, very much train at Nuclear Wild Forest. So it's about half an hour, 40 minutes away, but train there a couple of times a week, which is, yeah, you're right, is in Brentwood.
Wow. How did you get involved with Nuclear? How did you get to train down there? Was it just rock up for a race, or did you go down beforehand?
No, actually, so I started. I haven't always been into running and fitness and bits and pieces. I started probably about 2018. If I remember it quite well, actually, 2018 was when I started exercising properly, and trying to run. I was about 20, 22 stone, heavy smoker, going through a bit of a bad time with my own mental health. And I used to love going to the gym and working out, and then I kept pulling my back, and it just, it wasn't working, and I kept finding excuses. And then one day I thought, you know what, I'm going to go for a walk, and went for a walk, and then I had quite a long journey of becoming a runner and bits and pieces. And then I can't remember, going back to 2 or 3 years ago, a friend of mine recommended Nuclears in the racing, and I started looking into it, and found out they did weekend classes, and literally ever since then I've been going there pretty much as every weekend, especially on Saturdays for the OCR fit class. It's one of my non-negotiables when it comes to my week. Unless something really drastic has happened on a Saturday, then no matter what happens, I'll try and get there. And also Thursday evenings, midweek, and then do all the races. And it's become a huge, huge part of my life, not just for fitness, but for the community and the sort of the family feel, and the everything around it. And now my kids do it, and it's become a huge part of my life. Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing that you quickly touched on there. 2018, there was a bit of a change in your lifestyle, and that. Am I right in saying you went towards like the keto type of thing, and that was it, a major change? Tell me about the change.
So yeah, yeah, I went through the change. So yeah, I think I'd got to a point where I'd become not in the best headspace,
Mhm.
for a number of different reasons. I lacked any direction, motivation. I think, almost getting to that point where I was losing control on a lot of things. I felt like I was losing control on a lot of things, work, home, all of it. Just everything felt overwhelming. For money, all of this, and I started listening to podcasts and reading books, just something to try and help me out of it. And then one day decided to that I was going to try and. Oh, I didn't just ultimately decide I was going to start running, but started walking. Um, and then from walking, I thought, well, actually, I'm quite enjoying this. Then started to try and see if I could start to run, because a couple of my friends were runners. And it all sort of evolved from there, because I think, as I said, I was in a place where I felt like I didn't have a lot of control over
Mm.
anything in life. And all of a sudden, I had this thing in my life when it came to exercise and diet that I had a bit more control over. And I could almost set myself incremental targets, little goals, and things that made me feel a bit of self-worth, like going from couch to a 5K, for example. It gave me something to work towards that was mine, that was outside of everything else, all the chaos that was going on. And then from that, decided to eat a bit better, try things like keto, and try the high fat, high protein, low carbs, and just try different things, and try and sort of keep myself motivated with these little goals. And it went from there, really. And I think I went from 2018, I ran my first 10K at Christmas. Remember it well, because it was, as I said, my first 10K, and I've still got my little Christmas
Yeah.
medal it was December, for Christmas run in Greenwich Park. And that was my first ever 10K. And I've started running in September of that year. And then I went from there to running my first ultra within a year. And it was, as I said, literally for me, it gave me something to focus on, and to incentivize myself, and control over something, and progress, all of these kind of things that sometimes in life we feel that we're lacking. And I just found it through that. And then all of a sudden went from my running, and did the ultra, and then found Nuclear, obstacle racing, and started doing other ones. And it all just sort of went from there, really. Yeah, I think that's the short version of it.
That's a massive step. within 14, 15 months to go from zero to ultra distance. Did you have a bit of a fitness background before then, like at school or anything like that? Was it?
No, no. I mean, I'm quite a large chap. I'm sort of 6'6", and I mean, at the moment, I'm sort of around that sort of 19 stone mark. But I'm just a lot fitter than I was back when I was sort of 22
Yeah.
stone. It's in a different weight, I think. But you know, I've never been, or I never was that into fitness. I used to love going to the gym and lifting weights, but I kept injuring myself, putting my back out on bits and pieces. So sort of ended up giving up on that. And yeah, like even when I was at school, I didn't start really growing until I left school, really. So I was quite short, quite overweight, quite, you know, I just wasn't, certainly was not into any sports. I'd be in the sort of that team in PE where they pick all the good ones to go and do the good sport, and I'd be with the, you know, with the group that's sort of, you know, just there for the sake of it, really. So yeah, it never in a million years. In fact, up until I started, I used to, as I said, I've got a couple of friends that are runners, one in particular, my best mate. And I used to really take the mickey out of him when he used to go and do his runs and bits and pieces, because, you know, I'd never be a runner, I'd never do any of that. And now here we are. So it's amazing how things change.
It certainly is. I mean, I noticed in 2022, you did like the fourth ever High Rocks in the UK. Was it down at Olympia, down at one of the London events? And I can't see anything else. So is it one High Rocks and out? Not for you, the fitness game on that side of things?
You could say that. So funny enough, all right, so yeah, I did the High Rocks because I think, again, it's anything like this, when you find that as I said, for me, this is, I train, I do all these events, I do my weekly classes at Nuclear and all of that, mainly for my mental health, and the physical benefits are sort of a side point. You know, don't, you know, but for me, I started and still do for my own mental health. And when you, I think, as I said, I only speak for myself here, but when you start to find these things that give you that feeling of self-worth, or that feeling of, you know, that you've achieved something, it gets quite addictive. And I think that's why I went so quickly from that zero to ultra in that time, because all of a sudden that feeling I've been wanting, I found. But then you start doing different events and you want that next feeling, and you want the next, oh, I managed to do that. And so yeah, I did a High Rocks. And again, I'm not going to lie, although I do things like this, I'm not the fittest person in the world by any long shot. As I said, I do it for my to keep me happy. And I did my first High Rocks, and it was, I mean, I loved it, and I felt so good for doing it. But I think there's only been 2 races over the last few years where I've actually got halfway through and thought, I'm done, I can't complete this. And one of them was High Rocks. I remember lying on the floor with the burpee ball jumps, thinking, I went into it after training for OCR and training for and didn't quite, you know, comprehend the difference at the time in what I needed. But I completed it. I didn't give up. And I think that's another one of the feelings that I love from all of this, is trying to find that point where you think, I'm going to give up, I can't do this anymore. And that's where you find yourself, and actually you can keep going. And then when you have a bad day outside of all the races and that, you can sort of draw back to that point and go, actually, do I feel as bad today as I did when I was lying on the floor in the middle of Excel, wanting to throw up? I think, no, I don't. Okay, so then I can keep going a bit more today. So yes, I'd like to do High Rocks again. I booked in a couple, and then due to injury and other things, I've had to postpone it. But I think for me, my love is with like OCR, is with running with, you know, like the heavy weights and bits and pieces, and it is with doing things like Nuclear Fit as well. That I need to add. I've done 3 Nuclear Fits, and that I love. I love it, and it's placed to my strengths. And it is, you know, for me, just as difficult as High Rocks was, but different events. And so yeah, I think it's just about finding what you enjoy, but also what gives you that inner feeling. So yeah, I'm definitely I'll go back again, but I think for now, as I said, I'm training very much for Nuclear Fit at the moment, and I'm going to be doing those races this year and trying to beat my last year's times and whatnot. So to be continued.
What attracts you? I probably know the answer to this, because I like I said, I've looked at your Instagram and things like that. and some of your training methods are very much like using tires and chains and things like that. Is it that rustic feel that it's like nuclear fit is not like clean cut like Irox? It's not like, right, this is a skier, you've got, it's clean cut, where you're down at nuclear fit, you're running on grass, you're not running on perfectly smooth track. And the challenges are, they're not all the same way. When you're picking up the farmer's carry down there's going to be chips out of one. Some of them are going to be slightly lighter and heavier than others. Is it that rustic feeling because it plays to your, like I said, it plays to your strengths? Is it that what attracts you to go back there?
I think it's a few things actually. So one, I love training outdoors. I think no matter what the weather is, I love training outdoors. I love training. Again, it's all for the mental health, my mind. I like that sort of sense of space and greenery and bits and pieces. But for me, you're exactly right. For example, nuclear fit. I think one, it does play to my strengths. And I feel more confident, but also incredibly challenged whilst doing it. There's a couple of the stations which I feel very confident in. There's a couple that I absolutely dread because it doesn't play to my strengths. I'm not a fast runner, for example, or a couple of them I need to get better at. So I've always got something to work on. So there's that element to it. There's that, I don't know, I think there's almost primal feel sometimes. I like that training where you're sort of carrying heavy things and you're getting dirty, and it sort of gives you that I don't know whether I'd say that manly feeling, but I think it does to a degree. For me anyway, if I'm out in the woods throwing logs about, which is one of my favorite things to do, is just to go out into the woods, find a log, pick it up, throw it around, lift it, just to really, I don't know, feel, it just gives me that endorphin rush. And as I said, for me, nuclear is very much my sort of home. And it just feels like you're part of a really supportive community, and you're never short of people cheering you on. And I think, don't get me wrong, as I said, I really enjoyed High Rocks, but for me, I feel it's more of a community spirit, and there's always someone to cheer you on. There's always someone you can cheer on, and it's really, really difficult, really, really challenging. But it just plays to all the things that I love. And it's just, it's a real, I think it's the whole buzz of it, which is something that I love. I think, from start to finish, without doubt.
Yeah, I like that. You've touched on your mental health there, and we talked about a little bit about nuclear races being a community and that. And at one point, I know you were part of Team Grit, and I don't think you're part of them now, are you?
No.
I didn't think it was. But is it, for me, I went through a very similar thing to you, and a lot of my listeners know that I suffered with my mental health for a few years before I found OCR. Is it, do you crave that community? Is that part of overcoming your mental challenges? I know it is for me. I love the community. It's great when I meet friends and things like that. And I'm thinking, we've been part of Team Grit and Nuclear and things like that. Do you crave that as well as part of your whole mental well-being?
100%. I think, as I said, I think there's so many different elements to why fitness is so beneficial for the mental health. But for me, the community side of it is huge. And, when you're going through difficulties, when you're feeling low, and you just feel, as you said, you've been through it, you feel in a really, really dark and lonely place. And having a community around you is just is such an understated part of recovery when you're going through battles, especially with things like depression, anxiety, all of these kind of things. And for me, the community side is just as important as the physical side. The conversations you have while you're training together, the conversations you have in the car park afterwards if you're doing your classes, or at the beginning when you get there early, or at the end, and that sort of, you find like-minded people who, especially when it comes to OCR, I think as well, because it is literally about overcoming obstacles. It couldn't be any more apt for how it feels when you're overcoming your own mental health challenges, and you're surrounded by people who are pushing themselves to overcome different obstacles. And one of the things I love is not only when I get, because as I said, I'm not the fittest person in the world, I'm not the best obstacles in the world, I just do it because I love it and it's great fun and for all these reasons. But when you see people overcome an obstacle that they haven't been able to do, and they've been practicing for months, and all of a sudden they do it, and you see that, and it just makes you feel good. It makes you feel like it's not just that obstacle they've overcome, because it's as much mental as it is physical, and it's they've overcome something. But as I said, especially my Saturday classes, the OCR fit classes on a Saturday morning, it is literally like a non-negotiable in my house. It's, as I said, the only thing that really holds me back from going there is if I've got challenges with childcare, which I try and work around as much as possible, or if I'm at death's door, ill. But it's not just, if it was about the fitness, I could go for a run, I could go into the woods and pick up a log. But for me, especially when working from home, knowing that you're going to go and see people, you're going to go and have a laugh, you're going to, it is like a family feel, and it's more than just being around people. It's that uplifting side. It's that being able to talk to each other, and just going through. I think when you're crawling around mud and getting soaking wet on a Saturday morning, and you're freezing cold, you've got to be a certain type of person to be in that
Yeah.
position, willingly paying for it. So you've instantly got that bond, I think, and it's hugely important, hugely important.
I think it's sometimes a good balance, and you tell me if you don't agree this, but I find running can sometimes be a lonely sport. You're out there, you're running, you're doing whatever miles you do. I'm into ultra training, so I'm regularly running like 10 miles plus on my training runs. I've got an headset on. I've usually got some podcast listening to, usually some strange, weird, and wonderful crime series that I'm listening to, if it's not a sports one. But I find it very, very lonely. I'm out there with my thoughts sometimes. And sometimes, I actually love running up on the hills with no music at all, just like me, nature, running, just my own thoughts. And I actually come up with the most weird and wonderful ideas while I'm up there, and my mind is just trotting away. But then I like to come back, and I've got to admit, the first thing I do when I get back to my car after a run is pull out my phone and like see what's going on, because I do crave that community, that attention thing, and I see that in myself. It's. And I was going to say early on, when you first went through, we'll call it the change in 2018, so when you found running and that, you did a lot of meditation and yoga at the time, which when you're going running and then you're doing meditation and yoga, which is also very lonely, did you find yourself, you tell me, did you find yourself going down, or was the meditation, the yoga actually lifting yourself up a little bit? Was it a balance? I don't know.
It's a really interesting point, actually, and I could not agree more about a number of things you said there. One is that running can be quite a lonely place, especially when you're doing it at volume. And I think, you're right. Sometimes you need that space, you need that time away. And like you said, up in the hills, I went for a trail run over the weekend and took my bag of worries with me. And it was probably one of the best runs I've had in ages, because everything was just right. The weather was right, the scenery was right, everything felt right. And my head was, like you said, it was coming up with all these weird and wonderful things and ideas and solutions to problems that I've been thinking about for weeks and just couldn't find the answer to. And all of a sudden it pops up in your head. I did forget by the time I got back to the car, but it feels great when these things happen. But at the same time, it is lonely. And I think, I did do yoga and meditation for a while. I must admit, it's not really for me anymore. And I think that's the thing about self-care, and when you're looking after yourself, when I tell people what I do as a hobby, and I show them pictures of my Saturday morning class in the winter when we're all doing a bit, the looks that I get, or when I say to them, "Oh, next weekend I've got Oblivion, for example, and I'm going to be running for 6 hours and going into the water a bit," the looks I get are just priceless. Sometimes people are like, "You do that for fun, you pay for that." But it's a bit like yoga and meditation. It has to be right, and it has to help the person. And if it doesn't, there's nothing wrong with that. It just means that find the thing that does help. And I think it did help me for a while, but then I found that it was too long in my head. I need things to distract me and keep me going, which is why I think I moved away from, because I used to do just loads of running. When I found OCR, it was the best thing ever, because it broke up the running with the obstacles and the community and bits and pieces. And it played to how my mind works, which is needing a bit of distraction, needing that bit of challenge, but also varied. And that so I think I said it was good. I do things like hypnotherapy. I find really, really good, and I still do that to this day. And I've got some sort of pre-recorded sessions from a few years ago, and I might sit down in the front room for 20 minutes, lie on the sofa, stick it in my earphones, just listen to it, and then out we go, and on I'll get with the day. So I still do things like that, but things like meditation and yoga, they weren't really, they helped in the short term, but I found I kept making excuses as to why I shouldn't do it today and why it's not working. And I think when after a while, you think actually just it's okay to say it doesn't work for me at the moment, and let's find something else that does. So yeah, each to their own, I think, really on that, without a doubt.
Do you get that with running sometimes? That I go through lulls of where I can actually be running quite a lot one week, and then the next week, we'll just say I'm going to go out for a run on a Monday morning, and the heavens have opened, and I'm just not in the mood of going to get in wet through, and then it will throw me completely out of kilter for the week, and I actually feel myself slowly going down this negative mental path because I haven't run on a Monday, and my missus says I'm getting rangry because I'm getting angry because I haven't been for a run, and she'll actually force me to go out. She is really the best because she can see it in me that I'm itching to run, but because I didn't kick the week off with the run, I'm making excuses not to go. Something's cropped up. I've got to do a podcast. I've got to do some social media advertising or whatever, and I'm looking for excuses. Do you ever get to a point where your motivation's not there?
Literally every week. I mean, this is the beauty of it, is that I think is that, we know what we have to do, but sometimes doing it is the hardest thing in the world. And I think with anything like self-care, it's really easy to fall out of that habit. It really is easy to step off that ladder, and then you sort of think, well, I missed it yesterday. It's all right if I miss it today because I already did it yesterday. It's like a diet, if you have one bad meal in the morning, it sort of almost sets you up to, it's all right, I'll start again tomorrow. But tomorrow is always tomorrow. It's never today. And it's really good, like you said there, to have, like your missus sort of saying, look, I'm recognizing this in you. Just go and do it. And yeah, in fact, I've had one of those weeks this week where I had all these great plans to go out on Mondays, block the time out in my calendar. Then all of a sudden I get a last minute meeting come in, and you think, right, I'll put my run off till later on, and then something else happens. And then by the end of the day, I think, I'm exhausted and I've still got to do this. I've still got to do that. I'll do that tomorrow. And then the next day comes and you think, oh, a minute, now I'm just tired. And it's really, really hard. And I think for me, that's why, as I say, I'll keep coming back to this, but my regular classes that I do at Nuclear, I know that those are in the diary, and they're just something that's non-negotiable. So, for example, like my run on Monday, that was kind of negotiable because I didn't end up going for it, because if it wasn't non-negotiable, I would have done it. But I think I've got those sort of two key points in my diary, because if I know I don't go and do that class on Saturday and there was nothing wrong with me, then I need to really look inwards and go, right, what's going on? Are you okay? What do you need to do? Because I think even if I go 4 or 5 days, we're all human, we all have bad weeks, but I have to have those 2 days in my diary where I know that if I don't go, it's almost like a trigger warning for me to say, right, something, you need to step back and just, assess how you're feeling, what you're doing, why aren't you going? So yeah, all the time. Literally all the time I lose that motivation. We, as I said, we're human. We have bad days. Life hits us, and it's just. And then the last thing you want to do is prioritize yourself, which is a really sort of a contradictory thing, self-care. But if you're not having a great day, you're tired. The last thing it's really hard to look after yourself. So yeah, it's a battle, a daily battle.
Yeah. Definitely. But when I've had it, I'm so up, and I'm like, so my endorphins are back on, and I'm back on the ball. I'm running and stuff like that, and it helps my mental health. It really helps with mental health. When you've had your own problems, and we're going to we'll move on to them now, and that. When did you realise that your mental health wasn't 100%? What made you realise?
I think the irony is I didn't realise my mental health was 100% when I think it was probably about 5%. And I remember it very, very well. I think that the day that I got to that point was where I was sitting in my car in a car park near work, and I was on the phone to my wife in tears, saying, "I can't get out of the car. I can't get out of the car. I was stuck, and it was anxiety, it was depression, it was everything. All of a sudden, my brain just collapsed. It went inwards. Um, but I've been ignoring the signs for a very, very long time. I was at that point where crying in the car on the way to work was becoming quite a regular thing, either to work, on the way home from work. I wouldn't know why. I just felt so sad and so awful all the time, but I ignored it, and it came to a point where I'd ignored it, the warning signs for so long that they were no longer warning signs. It was just me, and it was how I felt, and I kind of felt like that's how I'm going to feel forever. And you start to feel like this is just normal. This is just how I feel. But yeah, I remember sort of being in that position where I was at a point in my life where when I finally did reach out for help and I spoke to someone professional, and they said to me, you sort of feeling suicidal, and is it that you want to die? And I said to them, it was the weirdest feeling, 'cause it wasn't that I wanted to die. I just didn't want to. I think I had the energy or the ability to keep living. It's a really weird place. So yeah, but I only really got to that place of realization when I probably was at that point where if I'd have carried on going a lot longer, then I don't know if life would have looked like. Because it was, I was in a bad way, and I hadn't really addressed it. And so yeah.
Can I ask who you reached out to? Because there might be someone out there who's listening to this who might be thinking along those lines, but doesn't know who to reach out to. Now, I know you work for Samaritans,
Yes.
and great charity, great organisation that they do. But there are other people out there. Who did you reach out to? Was it Samaritans, or did you reach out to someone else first?
Yeah, so I'd reached out to Samaritans, and I'd also reached out to. So you're right, there are so many people out there, and I think it's a really difficult thing because when you're in that space, one, you don't realize it potentially, and sometimes you do realize it, but you don't want to realize it, or three, you just don't know because it feels like normal. And then it feels like you're completely on your own, that no one gets it, no one understands. And then there's a shame around, I've got a young family, I've been married for years, young family. Admitting to those closest to you that you just don't feel that you can keep going anymore there's a guilt and a shame that comes with that. You don't want to say that because it's almost like, well, you don't want them thinking what's wrong with them, because it's not. It's how I felt, and I wasn't coping with anything. I just wasn't coping. So I've spoken to Samaritans, and then I spoke to my work had an EAP, which is an employee assistance program, and I remember reaching out to them. Again, while I was in my safe place, my car, as I said, when I used to cry, I was in my car. When I used to have my bad thought, it was in my car. It's where that sort of safe bubble was, where I was on my own. And then, I spoke to them, then got counselling and therapy, and then it went from there. And I had my sort of sessions with the EAP. And then after about 2 or 3 sessions, they helped me realise, I think after admitting how I felt and after knowing the true scale, I sought even further professional help, went to the GP, got put on medication, and the rest sort of built from there, really. But you're right, there's so many places out there. There's things, Samaritans, as I say, I'll always signpost Samaritans. I work and volunteer from them, and they were pivotal in my recovery. And then you've got things like Andy's Man Club, the safe space for men where men can go and meet and talk. You've got other organisations like Mind and Papyrus and all these kind of different organisations. There's a lot of support out there. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it. And obviously going through the GP, there can be a bit of a wait list for talking therapies, but it's all, you're on the path at least. It shouldn't be a blocker to not getting that support. And as I said, I'm 41, I'm 6'6", bald, tattooed, big, and I still take my medication. It's not the same dose that I had when I first started taking it those years ago, but I still take it because it helps and keeps me, where I am. It's very, very low dose, but I take it. And if I've had a few instances over the last couple of years where I've had to go back to the doctor and say, look, I'm feeling a bit like this. I've done this, I've done that, I've done all of this, but I'm still not feeling great. And then it might need a review. But, you need to do what you need to do, and there's no shame in it. Like if we broke our leg out on the course, if we're going over an obstacle, or like whatever, and you go and see someone, you go and get that support. You take what you need to take to support you. It might not be medication. It might just be sometimes. And apologies, I said, see the start. I can talk about this for hours. But when we get to a certain point, our heads, our thoughts and feelings, they feel like a bit like a tumble dryer, and everything's going round and round and round. And that's how I was getting to the point where I felt like that all the time. I was overwhelmed. I couldn't cope with the thoughts that were going on, and therefore I couldn't find a solution to some of my problems and this, that, and the other. And when our thoughts go round and round and round and round, it gets overwhelming, and it's a bit like a tumble dryer. Sometimes you need to stop the tumble dryer and take the clothes out and pack them into neat piles. A bit like our thoughts when we go and talk to someone, like when we talk to someone about how we're feeling, work's crap, or this is going on in my relationship, or I'm skint, I've got no money and I'm struggling. It's a bit like those clothes. The problem's still there, the clothes are still there, but just getting it out of our heads frees up a bit of space to keep going. And I know we've sort of spoken about that weight that I carry on my shoulders now to represent that mental health, but we've all got it. We've all got that thing that we carry, and we just, sometimes we just need to reach out and go, do you know what? I'm struggling with it at the moment, and that's okay. It's okay. But as I said, at one point in my life, I didn't think that. Now it saved me. So yeah, huge advocate of reaching out if people are struggling, because we all do. We're human.
I think when you had your issues and I had my issues, we both worked in very different environments. You was in very much you was in the railroad industry. You were very much manly, and things like that. When I had mine, I was in a sales industry, so it was all sales, all pressurized sales, but based around having fun and joviality, which I guess, in a little bit of respect, the railroad is all about banter and things like that, I guess. And I found it hard I couldn't speak to any of my work coaches, to any of my work colleagues or anyone like that about my problems, and I couldn't speak to my family. I went to very much like an EAP thing. Something happened in my life where I had to go and seek some type of counselling and that. And I saw mine, and they explained to me that a lot of mine stemmed back from when I was a childhood, and I was told to man up. My dad's attitude was always man up, whatever's there, just get over it, just continue in life. And we brought up with that thing, especially with you in the railroads. Do you think that was all potentially a little bit of catalyst to how you were feeling? That I guess there was a man up feeling in that environment.
It's very much, completely. You work in a male-dominated environment. There's a lot of banter. I sort of work my way up into these management positions and bits and pieces, and so there's the fear of, for example, people thinking I wasn't capable of doing my job because I was struggling, and it was at the time it was quite a cutthroat industry, really. So if you can't do it, then we'll find someone that can, kind of thing. And so you worry about that. You don't want to look weak. The culture was very much bantery, very much men being men, and you sort of just end up thinking, I can't say what's going on in my head, because if I do, then I'm either going to lose my job, people are going to see me differently, and it's a horrible place to be, absolutely horrible. And then I look back on it and think it's because of my fear of judgment and that fear of shame, or the feelings of shame that you get from talking about it, that stopped me. But now doing what I do and having been through it, it is literally that fear that is killing men. And I know it's obviously suicide but there's a huge challenge when it comes to men, especially of a certain demographic and age. And that fear is what's killing us. It's because we don't want to talk about it, because there's a lot of great work being done. Conversations like this, and just having the ability to come and chat to each other, complete strangers, just having a chat about our challenges. I love it. I think it's fantastic, because it shows that if we can do it, then others can do it, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just life. But that fear is what's killing us. As I said, the rail industry, don't get me wrong, there's some fantastic advocates in there, and there's a lot of work being done within all industries, but it's, unfortunately, when it gets in your head, it's really difficult, no matter what people are doing. once it's there, it's there. And yeah, very much. And again, highly pressurized as well. So it's 24/7 industry. There's always something going on. And I was always on my phone checking my emails, on conference calls at weekends, and there's no let up. But you don't want to turn around to your boss and say, I can't cope with this. I need some me time just with my family, because you're worried you're going to lose your job, or something bad. So it's just this perpetual motion of yeah, it's awful.
I've got a really good friend. I hope you don't mind me mentioning, but his name's, everyone knows him as Grumpy. You've probably seen him down at Nuclear. He's a great volunteer and he helps so many people. He put a post on his social media this week, and it really hit home to me. It said, it's 4 a.m. in the morning, and I would sooner you call me than me never to be able to speak to you again. And I thought, that's absolutely spot on, that, because at 4 o'clock in the morning, if somebody needs to speak to me, then speak to me, because I'd sooner you speak to me and then never ever speak to you again. But it's hard to speak to a friend. So we're here, we're speaking, we're opening up. It's just me and you at this moment in time. But while people are listening to this, there's thousands of people listening to this. But it's just me and you. We are strangers. We've not spoke verbally. We've chatted on messages a bit prior to this. But we can open up against it with it, because I think sometimes it is easier to open up to someone you've maybe never spoken before or never met before than to an actual friend. And that's, for me, is where Samaritans come in. Now, Samaritans, to me, I guess they've always been a case of, you call the Samaritans when you're about to commit suicide. Yeah. But that's not factual, is it? That is not the time to call them. You take this away from here.
All right, how long have we got? Right, so yeah, no, you're completely right. So there is a perception that Samaritans is there for when people are at that point where they want to end their life. And don't get me wrong, yes, we are very much there for those people, but we're also there for people that are struggling. We don't want people to get to that point before they call Samaritans. As I said, when you think of that tumble dryer feeling, it's when we're feeling overwhelmed, when these things are going on in our lives, that we just need to talk to someone and say how bad we feel, say all of these things, and someone to actually be there and listen. And I think the value of listening is so underrated even to this day, because that's exactly what we do at Samaritan. We listen to people. We let people stop that tumble dryer in their heads and unpack all of these clothes and unpack these thoughts, these feelings, these emotions. And we're not just there for that moment of crisis. At that point, we are there for when people need us, when they're going through difficult times, when they're struggling to cope. We answer a call every 10 seconds, and we're open 24/7, 365 days of the year. It's incredible the amount of people that need our service, but there's also a lot of people out there who need our service that don't either know about what we do, or don't know what to do when they call us. And as I said, it's, I've been volunteering with Samaritans now for about 5.5 years. It changed my life in so many different ways, both from support to the volunteering, and now I work for Samaritans full time. You're exactly right. It can be really, really difficult to talk to our friends. It can be difficult to talk to our loved ones, especially, let's face it, some of the reasons why we're feeling the way we do could be because of things that are going on with our friends or with the people around us, with our loved ones. You need someone to talk to that's outside of that, and just being able to have someone that will be there and listen to you, not give advice, not tell you what to do, not sort of give their 2 pence worth and go, have you tried this, to actually genuinely listen and not judge. As I said, the fear of judgment and shame is ultimately one of the contributing factors to what's killing us, what's killing men especially. So being able to ring someone up and know that they're not going to judge, they're not going to tell you what to do or what you've done right, what you've done wrong. They're just there to listen and to let you be you, and to talk about all of these things that you can't tell anybody else. And that's why I carry this weight on my shoulders a lot with me, because it's the way of visualizing that we've all got this weight on our shoulders. We've all got it there. And when, especially with Samaritans, when you ring and talk, that it's not having someone there to just take it off your shoulders for a bit. The weight's still going to be there when you finish that conversation. The problems aren't just going to disappear. They're not going to magically go away. But you've had a bit of a chance to rest. You've had that chance to put the weight down and just let somebody else carry it for a bit. You're not being a burden. Someone else is wanting to help you carry it. And I will add this: if anybody that's listening to this are struggling, that just, you know who you are, the ones that are sitting in their cars in tears, the ones that are just overwhelmed, the ones that can't string a thought together because they're in such a bad way. That's what Samaritan's there for. They're to help 24/7 on 116 123. So I have to add that in because I know that out there, just law of averages and numbers and the amount of people listening, there are going to be people out there that are struggling.
Definitely, and it's a free phone number as well. If you're out there, whatever you are on, whatever phone you are on, you can call. I'll repeat it: 116 123. And we're going to repeat it at the end of our podcast as well. So
Fantastic.
I'm going to come back to it before we finish. But
Yeah.
before we finish, I want to talk about your bag of worries.
Yes.
Because people are going to be thinking you don't worry anymore now. But not true. We know that's not true.
Nope.
So tell me about your bag of worries, and what is your bag of worries? Because when I saw this, I was like, well, you carry a bag of worries around with you, but what is it? Tell the listeners what it is, Andy.
So it's a rec bag from the wonderful nuclear wild forest, and it is 24.7 kilos. And I recently ran the London Marathon with it, so it's just a rec bag, carried it around the London Marathon, and it represents the weight that we carry. It represents all of these things that I've been talking about, the things that are going on in our lives, the money worries, the relationship worries, the work worries, the health worries, all of these things that we keep bottled up and keep weighed on our shoulders. And it brings it to life. It's a weight that we all carry. And I think this is one of the things, as I was training for it and as I ran the marathon, everyone was like, God, that looks heavy. Why are you doing that? Why are you carrying that? For me, we're all carrying it, or we all might carry it. We might not now, we might do tomorrow, depending on what happens. The only difference between mine and yours is you can see mine and you can't ignore it, and it's been a fantastic way of opening up conversations. It weighs 24.7 kilos because Samaritans are open 24/7. And you're right, it represents my worries as well, just because, I went through depression, like really, really bad depression. Just because I'm not in that place now does not mean that I've got it all sussed and I have, I'm fantastic, because I'm not. I have good days, I have bad days, like all of us. We're human. And I've just got certain things in, like I said, my non-negotiable classes and things like that trigger me to realize how bad I am. But I still have really, really bad days. So it helps me remember what I'm carrying. And as I think training for it and running it, the most amazing thing to come out of that whole experience was the conversations that I had because of it, from the people stopping me in the street on the marathon day itself and asking, what are you doing? Why are you running down the street or through the high street with this thing on your back? What is it? And then I'll tell them, it's my bag of worries. This is what it represents. And then all of a sudden, a bit like you and I having now, I've had so many conversations, and I'll come back to this, especially with blokes around, when they've seen it and I told them, they've been like, oh, do you know what? That reminds me of what I went through last year, or that kind of reminds me of what I'm going through now. And I've got so many pictures of just strange blokes that I've met along the way carrying my bag. So I'm like, look, can you help me carry it? That's the whole point. Can you help me share my weight just for momentarily? Can you take my weight for me? And it sort of encourages that it's okay to ask for help. I'm a big chap and I'm asking you to take my weight for me for a little while. And I've had some really amazing conversations and really heartfelt ones with people that have been really struggling, but we wouldn't have had that conversation if I didn't have a rec bag on my back in some random place. But it just goes to show that we can talk and we can, there's no shame and no judgment in doing it, but sometimes we just need a bit of a prod and a reason to open that conversation up. And for me, that's what that bag has done, and because of that, I'm now continuing to carry it. I still take it out for runs with me. I'm doing a few events over the coming months with it. Not raising any money or anything like that, just raising awareness and trying to get people talking. And if people want to help me carry it and they see me with it, then great. Help share my weight, because I need it, both physically and mentally.
What events have you got planned with it?
So the first one I've got is it's actually a sort of Samaritans related event. So we've got the National Walk. So every year a different branch holds these big walks that invites all people from the local communities together to come and do a walk. And there's a 13 and 26 mile route. So next week I'm at Arundel doing at the moment it's the 13-mile walk with the bag. And then I've got a couple of half marathons that I'm going to be doing sort of towards mid-year. Looking at, I'm tempted. I'm wondering whether I can and whether it would be safe to do any OCR with it, and just to carry it and put it down at the obstacles and bits and pieces. And it's all got my it's wrapped in Samaritans and things so that it stimulates that conversation. And I've also put my name down again to do the marathon next year. And then there'll be other things coming up. And as I said, I'm going out doing my runs with it. I went out on Sunday with it. And I've also just bought a new 40-kilo one, which I can train with, not necessarily do my runs with it, because obviously the 24/7 represents being open 24/7. But yeah, just it brings it more to life and certain things. So yeah, I'm going to keep carrying the weight on my shoulders for now anyway.
I think I'm going to turn around and I'll put my name online here. I'm going to say it is safe to do an OCR on one because I actually did the Tough Guy. I don't know if you remember Tough Guy.
I remember Tough Guy.
So I was one of only 3 people to complete Tough Guy carrying a car tire on my shoulder. So
love that.
So yes, you can do OCRs. You're going to be just a bit mindful of other people around you.
Yes.
But I actually did, and it's great you say that because when we did it, ours was for a young lad who has got cerebral palsy and he's got lots of challenges in his life. And we said, like, in his life, he got the challenges, we got our challenge. We was going to carry a car tire in respect of him. So, so we did it with a car tire. Me and 3 of my friends did it with a car tire and did the whole course, did everything on the course with the car tire, even jumping from the bridges and going up all the high obstacles and everything else with it. It was extremely dangerous, I think, at some points, but extremely great fun to do it. So yeah, I think that would be absolutely. And I'm sure you're gonna, you're asking there people to take your worries off you. You're going to come to an obstacle and you're going to say, "Can you hold my worries for 2 minutes?" What a talking point! What a talking point!
Do you know? I'll tell you what, right? Just you saying this, you've got me, fired up. So I will. So I'll have a chat with some people. But so as I said, I've got some Nuclear Fits coming up, and I've also got Oblivion and Fallout booked for this year. And I think you're right. Just watch this space.
Watch this space. Before I let you go, I want to just quickly go back to a lot of men's health, and women suffer from mental health as well. So any of my female listeners out there, I'm not disrespecting you guys as well. Samaritans are there for you. Samaritans are not just for 100%. Men. But we've currently got 2 men on this call, so we're talking a little bit about men as well here. Men's suicide is massively on the incline. Men's, over 40s. I've read somewhere quite recently that is it 2 or 3%? You probably know the statistics or something like that.
So, and I think you're right to address that point. One is that yes, very much appreciate that we all suffer, men, women. We all do go through it, but again, I think in this kind of context, you're right. 75% or around. Sometimes it fluctuates slightly more, but around 75% of all suicides are male. It's the biggest killer of men under 50. For me right now, I'm more likely statistically to die by suicide than anything else, just because of my age and my demographic. So I think it's as a man, it's huge risk, huge.
And if someone is feeling like that, Samaritans are there. We've just mentioned that. Give them the number again, Andy.
Number for Samaritans is 116 123.
Fantastic.
You're right. It's free phone number, and we're open 24/7, 365 days of the year.
So if you are listeners, if you are feeling overwhelmed, in any way, shape, or form, you want someone to talk to, call that number. But my question is for you, Andy: what can people do if they're not ready to talk yet? What would your bit of advice if they're not ready to talk? There are going to be plenty of men out there that are saying, this is not me. They're not talking about me. Alan's not talking about me. I am talking about you, because if you're thinking, I'm not talking about you, I am talking about you. Yeah. You might not be ready to talk to anyone. What can people do? What would you suggest?
I think it's really, really difficult, isn't it? Because when we're at that point where we're not ready to talk, and as I said, I was at that point where I didn't even think that was me. I thought, I'm not that bad. And the fact is, I'm going to work in my car crying. And again, that was a bit of naivety, but it's self-preservation. You don't want to admit you're in that space, and we're human. That's okay. We feel like that, and nothing I can say, nothing I can do is gonna change how someone feels until they're ready. And I think it's really difficult because then you get to that point of saying, look, whatever we're doing, look after yourself, self-care, make sure you're getting time for yourself, make sure you're doing things that you enjoy, that give you that sense of achievement and bits and pieces. But again, when you're in that space and you've got low self-worth, you've got low self-esteem, you've got that low opinion or that low feeling, the last thing you want to do is look after yourself as well. Sometimes self-care is one of the hardest things to do when we feel like that, so it's all counterintuitive to look after yourself when you don't really value yourself. So I think it's just being, if it's being mindful of how we feel, it's being mindful of the signs. It doesn't have to just be sitting in your car crying. For me, the other signs were I was getting really, really irritable and snappy at home. The smallest thing would make me flare up, but the biggest thing I was, super productive on. Great, give me a crisis and I'll manage it. But tell me you've spilt a mug on the carpet and poof, because you project on different things, and I couldn't control, that anger sometimes. Obviously, I control the anger, but that frustration, that build up, that just it's when you all of a sudden, when you realize you're not doing the things you enjoy anymore, you've stopped going out for the run, but it hasn't just been a few days, it's been a few weeks, and you sort of almost don't care anymore. It's when you get to those kind of points where it's not that you're not doing it, it's that you don't care, you're not doing it anymore. That's another sign. There's all these little things that but again, it could be that someone's all of a sudden started to exercise a lot more, and that could be a sign because it's the opposite of what they normally do. And it's just being mindful of how you feel and knowing that when you are ready, if you're not ready now to talk, or you might not think that applies to you, just know whether it's today, whether it's tomorrow, whether it's in 6 months' time, you're never alone. There's always someone there for you. The fact that you and I are having this conversation now shows that the world's still spinning, everything's still going on, and I can say today that I've had a bad day. If I had a bad day yesterday, I wouldn't hesitate in saying, you know what, I had a really bad day, and I had a little cry to myself because I just needed to get it out, and it was better doing that than doing something detrimental to me. The world's still spinning. We're still here, but we kind of want everyone to still be here as well with it. And for those people that are worried about someone around them, just be there. Just listen. We don't have to have the solutions. We don't have to have the answers. If someone is down, if someone's really, really feeling it, sometimes just being there and saying, look, I'm in this hole with you and I'll stay here while you need me, is the best thing we can do, because we can't. Some people aren't ready for solutions. They just need someone to be there and to just say, look, I'm with you. When you're ready, I'm with you. It's incredibly powerful.
And Andy, if I've got a friend who's struggling, this is not a euphemism, by the way, because I know what my mental health is. If I've got a friend who's struggling, what should I do? What's the best thing I could do to help them? Or is there something that can help me to help them?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think there's a couple of parts to this. One is to make sure you're looking after yourself, because when we're worried about someone that's close to us, a friend, a relative, we can often feel like we want to do more than what we physically can, what we're actually able to do. So I think it's just being mindful of how you're feeling and making sure you're okay and you're getting the support if you're really worried, because that worry can really affect you. But what I would suggest is on the Samaritan's website, there is an abundance of information on there about what to do if you're worried about someone that's struggling, sort of step by step in terms of things like listening, how to listen, how to truly listen, how to get that conversation started. Because having a conversation with someone we're worried about, it can be really difficult to instigate that conversation, and not everybody's either comfortable or knows how to, was worried about saying something they shouldn't. What I would say, and this thing is really, really important piece, is that if you're worried about someone and they might be feeling suicidal, it's okay to ask. You're not going to put that thought in their head. If you hear certain trigger words, trigger sentences, which again are all on the website, I just don't want to be here anymore, for example. It's okay to say, when you when you say that, do you mean you don't want to be alive anymore? You're thinking about, ending your life. It feels very difficult to say, but that could potentially be life-saving, because that gives that person all of a sudden the acceptance that they're not going to be judged and that it's okay to talk about, and it's not going to plant a seed. It's not going to make someone all of a sudden think, no, but I am now. If someone's thinking about it, they're thinking about it, but knowing they're safe to say yes, it is, it's like taking that 24.7 kilo bag and throwing it as far as you can. The weight that it can take off is incredible, because all of a sudden they can talk. There's that acceptance there that they're not going to be judged and that someone's going to listen to them. But yeah, there's loads of information on the website. There's loads of support out there. And yeah, if anybody is worried, as I said, I'll definitely signpost them to Samaritans.org. The website, loads of information. And again, if you are worried, you can always call Samaritans and just say, you're worried, and talk about what's going on for you. And there are certain ways in which we might be able to support in terms of callbacks and bits and pieces. But my first point of contact, I'd probably say check the website and then take from there.
Fantastic. Andy, it has been an absolute pleasure speaking to you.
You too. Yeah. It's been fantastic.
I'm sure we've hit it off. I know we've hit it off straight away. It's been great. This absolutely brilliant. For all you listeners out there, remember, if you want to get in touch with Samaritans, it's samaritans.org. And that's, if you like me, it's www. But if you're modern, it's https:// whatever it is. And if you want to call them, it's 01. No, it's not 01. It's just 116. Yeah. You just put a note in there. It's just 116 123, and it's free 24/7. That's 24.7 kilograms, just like
That's
Andy's
right.
bag of worries. Andy, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Alan. I really appreciate the conversation and just getting the conversation, out there, and that is fantastic. Really appreciate everything you're doing.
I don't know what you want. Let's have